All right. Welcome. Do I got to sign in here? We are back. It's been a minute. It's been a hot minute. Let me sign in so I can see the chat. There was no schedule for this one. I just wanted to get back into the flow. BitMonkey TV will be back at some capacity pretty soon. I've just been doing a few other things. This type of content is actually going to be live streamed on a whole nother channel, so go follow it ahead of time. It's at DFS Monkey. I have to wait 24 hours to be approved for live streaming on that channel, so I figured I'd just do the live stream on this channel in the meantime, because I meant to do it last week and didn't have enough time to do week one. So we're going to roll off the season with week two. My name is Malo, for those of you who don't know me. I've been playing DFS for, sorry, I'm multitasking, just confirming this Google account here, since 2012. Primarily played on FanDuel for the first few years, and then I started playing on both FanDuel and Draftkings in 2017. Log in BitMonkey TV. And yeah, I've had some big wins. Nothing crazy, no big tournaments, but smaller field, guaranteed prize pools, and then cash. Cash is my staple. Every week I play about 70% of my allocated funds towards that week into cash head-to-head lineups. So today we're going to go over kind of my approach for cash and GPP. And we'll build a super chalky lineup for cash, and then we'll build just a crazy YOLO lineup for GPPs. So drop a comment below if you have any questions. And looks like that's set up. And let's get straight into cash. So before we do any of that, though, let's go take a look at game totals. I normally check out Pinnacle throughout the week. It's one of the sharper books in the market, but Fantasy Labs has a great chart here that's very visual, so we'll use that for the sake of visuals. This is not a paid promotion, just like some of their tools. So we can organize this if we wanted to. Let's just refresh the page. I like looking at it just normally. At the very top, we can see this is very interesting for GPPs. Nobody's probably going to play Derrick Henry after last week and after John Harbaugh saying that they don't intend on giving Derrick Henry up to 20 touches this week. That's floating around in the news this week. So could be an intriguing GPP play. Especially with J.K. Dobbins going off on the Raiders last week. Maybe the Raiders cleaned up their gaps. Maybe their defense is going to be a little better. And forgive me, that opened at 7. It's now 8.5 favored towards Baltimore. So definitely not a Lamar week for me or pass catchers. But in GPPs, you could go Derrick Henry and Mark Andrews. It's a weird secondary stack, but that might take down a tournament. Moving on down to New Orleans at Dallas. They're 6-point favorites as of now. This is just doing all my research this week. This is one of the sneakier game stacks, or rather just stacks in general. You don't have to game stack this. But a Dak Prescott to CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks. I don't think there's too much of a revenge narrative anymore, but he was drafted by New Orleans. He played his first 2 or 3 seasons. I can't remember exactly how many with New Orleans. Let's actually go take a look. So I use this site primarily because it's free. You do have to filter the data quite a bit, but once you learn how to use it, it's just a great place to go look at history against certain teams. And it looks like my internet's going nice and slow. We have an upgrade coming at the end of the month, so I'm excited for that. Let's go. All teams versus New Orleans. And this is something I definitely check out for strong revenge narratives and history of, a particular receiver. This is usually for receivers going back to their team that drafted them, seeing how they play. So when he went to New England in 2017, he didn't do much, right? Looks like they got that dub 36-20. But in the next following year with the Rams at New Orleans, he went off. He had a day in New Orleans. But then at home versus New Orleans, still a part of the Rams, he did decent. I mean, for his price, we'll check the DraftKings price in a second. I'm kind of intrigued by the Brandon Cooks, and I don't think too many people are on it. I'm going to check my ownerships to see exactly where he stands, but I kind of like it. And I'm not sure how many people are going to be on CeeDee Lamb this week, either with a few games that we're going to get to that I think are going to be the focal point of the week. Moving along, this is an ugly looking game. Panthers looked absolutely horrible. I do have Deontay Johnson in my season long that I reached for in the 7th round or the 8th round. I can't remember, but he was a disappointment. He did get quite a few targets. He got the first look of the day from Bryce Young, but Bryce Young, I don't know if that was just a New Orleans putting a beating on there. I believe that's a divisional opponent, or if that's just how Bryce Young's going to play and how that offense is going to operate. I don't like to put too much into week one. Week one is always a gamble. I play the least amount on DFS on week one. I tend to take more chances. I go with gut feelings rather than where the market is, because we still don't know how certain teams are going to play. Moving along, New York versus Washington. It's a pick'em, damn near a pick'em. Washington, as we saw from last week, horrible defense. Mayfield and company tore them up. Although Jaden Daniels on Washington did have a good fantasy day, let's not forget that he fumbled the ball 3 times. And I know his ownership's coming up for cash because of his rushing upside. I have another approach I might take. I mean, initially I do want to just put him in for cash, but it's still early in the season. Those 3 fumbles that Washington recovered could have easily been recovered by Tampa Bay last week, and that would have changed his outlook and his score for the week. So I'm generally staying away from this game. But Wan'Dale Robinson, I believe he had 12 targets last week in New York. Everybody thought, what was the name? Malik Neighbors was going to have just a big start to the year. I mean, rookies rarely do. Who knows? He might get it there this week. Moving along, we have Indianapolis at Green Bay. Jordan Love is doubtful. He should be out. That leaves an interesting bare minimum quarterback in Green Bay. I feel disgusted for even saying this, but Malik Willis. Is it Malik Willis? Yeah, Malik Willis. He hasn't been too good in the NFL at all. But at 5,000, we don't need much for him to hit value. And I'd need to check stats with Indianapolis, but I don't know. It's an interesting dart throw and getting a little bit different in cash, allowing you to pay up on wide receivers and go chalky for the rest of your lineup. I'm kind of leaning Malik Willis, but Jaden Daniels is my first pick for cash so far. Moving along, we're going to have an insane chalky Jordan Mason after that performance on Monday night. And rightfully so. Christian McCaffrey is out this week, and it looks like they're going to put him on IR for at least 4 weeks. So nobody saw that coming. I didn't. Moving along, Browns at Jacksonville. Watson looked like shit. I have Amari Cooper in my season long. David Njoku's out. I'm not sure how long, but he's definitely out this week. I hope they feed Cooper for my season long. Am I going to touch Cooper in dailies? Maybe in a GPP lineup or two, but I'm not sure yet. But that's an approach that you could take instead of going with the Bearman Jordan Atkins, which is really the only healthy, competent pass catching tight end in Cleveland right now, unless they bring somebody on. But we're already Saturday, so that's going to be the guy this week, and I believe he's 3,000 on DraftKings. Moving along, Seattle at New England, 38.5. 3-point favorites to Seattle on the road. Okay. Initial thoughts is I know Ramondre Stevenson had a great week last week against Cincinnati. He could have a great week this week as well. I'm pretty sure they're going to lean heavy on the run until they get Drake May in there. I think he's viable this week, although I might not get there. I think he's viable. And then we have the Jets at Tennessee. An initial just market sentiment on Bryce Hall is he's looking like he's going to be 30% owned at least, which is insane to me because of how expensive he is. I guess I kind of understand it, but at the same time, Tennessee has always been known to be a stout running defense. Maybe that's changed this year. We'll learn as the season progresses, as these defenses play, probably through week 7, we'll know if they're still a good defense against the run, if you'd rather pass to them, although I know they improved their secondary. And we'll go take a look at the Bears. I don't think Swift did too well. So that's what's shocking to me. I know Bryce is a unique talent, but is he going to be that guy? I don't know. For the ownership, I don't know. That's one cash lineup or one cash play that I might fade this week. This stood out to me at the beginning of the week. We got Tampa Bay going to Detroit. Forgive me. I'm tired. And what should be the game of the week, but I have some thoughts, and we'll go through them when we go over the DraftKings lineup. But this is the game to target for sure, 110%. This is another game to target. Los Angeles Rams going to Arizona Cardinals. Now, it is a divisional matchup. Sometimes they're low scoring. So keep that in mind. That's one thing that I've learned over the years is a game might be projected to score a lot of points from Vegas, but there's divisional matchups like we saw they did score a lot of points between New Orleans and Carolina, but they got stomped on. It's a divisional opponent. So keep that in mind. This might not be as high scoring as people think, but Cooper Kupp is definitely a lock for me this week in cash because Puka Nacua is out. I think he's going to just dominate as far as targets. And even if this game goes to the under, Cooper Kupp's still going to have a great day. But chances are, based off of how Arizona's defense is and even Los Angeles's defense now, I think it's going to go to the over. But don't be surprised if it goes to the lower is all I'm saying. These divisional opponents they flick a switch and they play differently when they play each other. So then we have Pittsburgh at Denver. It's not too appealing to me. Game total, super low. Looks like we're still uncertain who's going to be starting, but it looks like it's going to be Justin Fields. We might have a play or two from there, but I'm personally going to just cross that game off of my list for this week. Now we have Bengals going to Kansas City. Kansas City's defense was susceptible in week 1, as we saw with the Ravens. The game was more high scoring than I thought it was going to be. Maybe this Kansas City defense is still taking some time to get adjusted, but there's some pieces from this game, and just looking at how they're 6-point favorites, I'm leaning Pacheco. and we'll see. Now, that's going to conclude kind of like the discussion for the week because these two are on prime time and we're not talking FanDuel today. In the future, I will start making DraftKings and FanDuel videos because I am playing on both platforms this year. But just for the sake of getting back in the flow of recording these videos, that's the look at this week. So let's start building a cash lineup. Go to head-to-head. What am I picking? Well, let me just pull up ownerships over here. And forgive me, I can't show you my ownerships chart because it's not technically mine. I'm a part of a group. And I am not about to get my subscription suspended for showing these. But I can talk about them. So right now we have Cooper Kupp projected close to 25% ownership. He'll probably exceed 30, I would imagine, by the time lineups lock. I'm going to go ahead and lock him in there. Now, I think I might actually be locking him in the flex because I think there's enough wide receivers this week for me to go 4 WR instead of 3 running backs in cash. But we'll see. We'll see. And then we do want to grab the chalky Mason because he's cheap enough. He's not so cheap, but 5,200 for, I mean, he had 29 opportunities on Monday night. Will he get that same amount of run? I don't know because we do have Samuel as well. Can't forget he had 8 of those rushing attempts, but also 9 targets. So, and let me go check an interesting stat here. It looks like Minnesota is actually 10th versus the run and 18th versus pass catching RBs, whereas the Jets were ranked 28th and 26th. This is pulling in data from the beginning of last year. Now, I know things change from season to season, but that's something to note. But in cash lineups, if he does go off and you don't have him, chances are the other person you're playing has a unique enough lineup to win by a couple of points. So I'm just going to go ahead and lock these two in there for that strategy. Now, I don't want to lock in Breece Hall because of how expensive he is. If I'm going to pay $7,400 for a running back, I want an ideal scenario where he's at home and favored. He's favored on the road against a defense that has been notoriously known for stopping the run over the past few seasons. So I don't want to go there. I don't want to follow that chalk personally. I might regret it, but I'm not going to follow that chalk this week. So another chalky running back looks like it's going to be Kyron Williams. He's coming in close to 20% right now. And that's an interesting double stack that we can do with Los Angeles. He got a ton of opportunities there. I mean, 22 chances to touch or catch the ball. It's a lot. He didn't perform too well, but that was against an improved Detroit Lions defense. So I'm going to go somewhere else, though, for cash, I think. But you know what? For the sake of the cash lineup here on the demonstration, let's just leave them locked in for now, and we can always move them around. Now, going to cash. Originally, I was looking at Jaden Daniels, right? He had a great overall box score week for fantasy points. However, when you look at his attempts, only 24 passing attempts, 16 rushing attempts with 88 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he didn't get those 2 touchdowns, I mean, did he make value? He almost made value, but do we want to count on that with a matchup that has been notoriously aggressive towards one another? I don't know. I mean, yes, fine, whatever, great, but bear with me here. We can save 1,200 if we go. This is crazy talk, but watch how the rest of the lineup unfolds. Let's just put Malik Willis in there. All we're looking for is 15 points out of him. That's it. 15 and I'm happy. Could he easily just get 5? Sure, he can. But on the other side of the ball, we have Anthony Richardson, which was my lock last week for cash. I pretty much won most all my cash lineups, but there were a few due to some of the lower tier wide receivers that I picked that I didn't win those head-to-heads, but I won, I think, 80% of my head-to-heads at least. And he did great. What was concerning, though, he only passed 19 times. Less than 50% completion. I did have an Anthony Richardson to KD Mitchell stack, and man, I was heartbroken. I had that stack in cash because KD Mitchell was cheap enough, and I was willing to get close to a 0 from him. That's honestly why I lost those 10% of those lineups. But it allowed me to get up to Tyreek Hill and a few other pieces that went off. All he needed to do was connect 2 missed opportunities, 2 missed. He could have had 4 touchdowns on the day plus 1 on the ground. I mean, his score would have been closer to 40. I know that lineup would have taken down some tournaments too. Sad thinking back. But when we look at this matchup and look at the other side of the ball, even with Jonathan Taylor, let's say they're running up the score, Malik Willis is going to get his run. He's going to get his opportunities. And he was known, I was checking this before the stream, he was known in college for running a ton as a quarterback. I mean, just look at this. 14 touchdowns, way more attempts, 1 less touchdown. But his average over those past 2 years at Liberty, decent. But my point being is we have a sneaky... Now, it's risky for cash because he could easily put up a 0, but let's just build the lineup as is and see where it goes. Now, who else did I want here? It was right here. This game. I really want to target this game. Now, Godwin last week just killed it. Absolutely killed it. Mike Evans killed it. 2 less targets, but killed it because of those 2 touchdowns. Now, this week, I'm going to look back at last week and think, wow, Cooper Kupp, slot receiver, Godwin. Against Detroit, slot receiver, I think he's going to do well this week. I'm just locking him in there. Now, hear me out. Antonio St. Brown. Not Antonio St. Brown, but St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Didn't have the best week last week. I drafted him in the first round in my season long. I'm heartbroken. I lost last week because of that. Dud. I think I'm locking him in cash this week. I do want to monitor whether or not Jameson Williams is limited or not. I don't think he will be, but if he's out, Amon-Ra is definitely a lock. Definitely a lock. I want to try to build a lineup with him in there, so let's see how this goes. Although we might have to go down to Jameson because of price and what it allows us to do with the rest of our lineup. Now, let's go look at tight ends before I sneak in that last wide receiver. I kind of just want to go for this TE number 1. He's going to get a lot of opportunities, I think. He's not bare min. I was hoping he was bare min. I personally in cash like going with bare min tight ends unless it's a certain week where, especially on tight end, I forget what it's called, but there's usually, I'm pretty sure it's at the end of either, I have to Google it again, either the end of this month or the end of October. I'm pretty sure it's the end of September where it's tight end week. And it's like, across the league, Kittle, Kelsey, all these big tight ends, like they really love that week, and tight ends generally go off on that week. So that's when I'll be more comfortable paying up for a tight end, or if I'm stacking a tight end with the quarterback. But in this case, I'm probably not doing that with Green Bay. I'd rather go for the sure, like this is my TE1 from this team this week, because Njoku's out. But another thought could be made to throw in Cooper. It's not in cash. I mean, yes, but I probably won't get there because I want to target Kansas City. I really want to target some of this game. Whether I target the running or the passing, haven't decided yet. But these are the two I'm looking at here for cash. Xavier Worthy had a great start to the season, start to his NFL career, but he only touched the ball 4 times. But they are putting him in positions to score. 2 touchdowns on the day. Pretty fast individual, pretty amazing individual. I know a lot of people are on Patrick Mahomes to Travis Kelce stacks this week. It's very high owned. And I think I want to go a little different. I either go with, I think he's too expensive for this structure here. I think, yeah, this actually won't work. So let's come down from Amon-Ra and go to Jameson Williams. So we get our piece of that game. And then that opens up a lot more salary to work with. So then I could probably just throw Cooper Kupp in the wide receiver and then flex it with Pacheco. Generally don't like paying for the highest defense. Let's say I wanted some correlation and I think the Chiefs defense wakes up this week. Maybe I'll do that. And then that gives me 1,000 to work with. Let's get away from Kyron Williams because while I'm high on him, I'm not that high on him. This does allow me to go to the chalky Breece Hall if I wanted to. But here we have it. We have, for the sake of just talking cash, chalky running back. I'm pretty sure Godwin's going to get some decent ownership, although I don't think he's going to be over 20%. That may change between today and tomorrow, but as of now, he's sitting around 12%. Jameson Williams, where's he at? He's sitting around 10%. So we're getting different. Let's see. Cooper Kupp. Deebo Samuel's 20% as well, which I honestly like the Deebo Samuel better than the Jordan Mason at 35%. That's insane. That's just insane to me. And then Breece Hall is projected 34%. That's just... But in cash, might as well just do it and then get different in a few other spots. So maybe we can get away from Malik Willis. Justin Fields, how did he do last week? 14 rush attempts against Atlanta. Oh, I might actually feel more comfortable going with Justin Fields than a Malik Willis. For sure. But then another thing you could do, if you still want a piece of that Kansas City game for cash, keep in mind, though, this is the chalkier. Let me double check his ownership. As of now, it's close to 20% ownership on Rashee Rice. But I do like all those wide receivers right there. That's pretty epic. But when you move it over to Pacheco, why isn't he showing in that chart? Pacheco is only 12% ownership as of now. So that's somewhere you can get a little bit different, is you can come spend a little more for Pacheco. They are 6-point favorites after all. You're also hedging against anybody who has Patrick Mahomes on the other side of your head-to-head. And let's say, I mean, he had 18 opportunities. It's a lot of opportunities. He didn't do much with them because of Baltimore's defense, and Xavier Worthy stealing one of his rushing touchdowns. But, I mean, he's also very expensive, though, right here. I'd like to see him score 22, 24 fantasy points this week. So this might be a little too risky in cash. Let's see, anywhere else we can go? So coming down from Kyron Williams, you could always go James Conner, save some salary there, and then you have a unique secondary stack right there. And this could allow us to maybe come down to... But see, then I don't get a piece of that Kansas City game. I really want a piece of it. I really do. So I think for the sake of sticking to my approach, I'll put Pacheco in there, or Pacheco. Just 6-point favorites that generally leans towards he's going to get some extra opportunities. Bengals didn't look too hot last week. Higgins is out again this week. So is it competitive? I don't know. In GPPs, I think there's an interesting strategy to go with a Burrow to Chase to Gesicki stack, or even just Burrow to Chase and then run it back with Xavier Worthy, for example, because he will be lower owned than Rice this week. But we'll get there in a second. Let's just finish this cash approach. Now, for the sake of kind of keeping with the chalk, let's put Daniels back in there. And then that leaves us enough for a low tier defense. I don't like it. I'd rather come up to... I mean, Patriots, their defense is actually pretty good this season. I think they're going to be a top 10 defense. So they might surprise everyone this week with Seattle coming to their stadium. Kind of just want to force him in there, but then I'd have to come down from him to Fields. Yeah, it's an initial first look cash lineup. I wouldn't recommend copying these lineups as things could change between now and tomorrow. But let's go ahead and clear this and go for a GPP approach. Now, shockingly, Mayfield is not garnering too much ownership after this performance last week. I think people are chalking it up to that's Washington. He almost passed for 300 yards. Imagine what he does when he plays a team who can score. I think he's viable this week in GPPs. On the other side of the ball, Goff as well. I think Montgomery gets stopped. I think the run gets kind of put into check. And I think Detroit might have to pass the ball more. So that could leave Goff open to more production this week. And Laporta, he's a top-end tight end, very expensive. This is a unique way to start your lineups. I think a lot of people who are going to play Goff this week are going to play him with Jameson Williams because it's a cheap combination, or Amon-Ra and Jameson. But Laporta, that's interesting. Gibbs as well as a pass-catching RB is interesting. What if we were to do a Goff to Gibbs to Laporta, bring it back with Godwin? I like that. And then we go and target. I think I would still want Kupp in GPPs. He's just one of those players this week. I think that you might need, because he should be 8,400. He should be closer to 9,000, but he's not. And I think after this week, he will be. So let me try to force him in there, see what happens. Let's go to Kansas City. Put in Xavier Worthy, big play abilities. Does he go off against Cincinnati? I doubt it, but GPP YOLO type mindset right there. Let's pick a defense really quickly. Let me just bare min low Cardinals, since it is a divisional opponent. I know that this number is skewed. It should only be 3 fantasy points, but DJ Dallas did run a kick return back, the first run of the new dynamic kickoff of the season since the change. I doubt he does it again this week, but Los Angeles isn't Buffalo, and they're not a divisional opponent. Maybe the Cardinals wake up against their divisional foes in the Los Angeles Rams this week. And I still want Kupp in that case. So this is a unique, contrarian, crazy. Let me put the defense against one of my wide receivers. See what happens there. Now, we did talk about Derrick Henry a lot initially, but that doesn't leave us enough salary for our last position. So let's bring it down, Is this interesting? No, he didn't have too many 15 targets. They got stomped on. We might have to go a different direction, actually. This is GPPs after all. Now, hear me out. Detroit. Nope. Tampa Bay. McMillan, I think, has surpassed Trey Palmer for the number 3 role. He did get a touchdown. He would have had more last week. I was watching the game, but he had 2 drops or 2 misses. He's almost bare min. If I remember correctly, somebody from Tampa Bay is now in the Detroit secondary. They're very familiar with practicing with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. So what if they have a scheme to lock down Mike Evans, which is very hard to do, but what if they do? And Chris Godwin has a great week, but still gets somewhat locked down. It might be a McMillan week. And this is silly for the Millie play. So fuck it. Why not? Right? That frees up a ton of salary for us to play with too. So let's go to our second running back. Now can we squeeze in Derrick Henry? We sure can. How much does that leave us? 44. So let's check his ownership. This might not be too GPP, but he did get 12 targets. And if that continues, I want a piece of it. So look, Malik Neighbors did get 7, but he only, he actually had a great week, if you think about it, for a rookie's first game of the season. Just wish he had better quarterback play, to be honest. But he averaged 13.2 yards a target, 7 targets, not bad. We go to Wan'Dale Robinson. He's that slot man there. 12 targets, 1 rushing attempt. I want him, especially if everyone's going to try to give Malik Neighbors another chance. I'd rather get him. That allows me to keep Worthy there, or even Cooper. That's an interesting GPP approach. But then I don't have exposure to that Kansas City game that I want. Now, he could easily dud, though. This could easily be a 0. This could easily be nothing. But here's a GPP approach. We're chalky with Kupp. Gibbs might garner some ownership. Wan'Dale might garner some ownership, but not a lot. Laporte is coming in at 5% right now. Gibbs is definitely coming in at 10%. And Goff around 5%. So it's unique enough to possibly take down. And then to kind of go against that Jordan Mason. I know they played the Giants, but I'm a Niner fan too. I don't like plugging in the Vikings, but the Vikings might be a GPP winning defense this week. Could be wrong, but they might be. And that gets us off of that Jordan Mason ownership as well. I mean, we don't have him to begin with, but what we're doing here is kind of upping that bet against Jordan Mason not performing as well as everyone thinks, and everybody who's going to be in the GPPs is probably going to play him. There's 30% projected as of now, so you kind of hedge against that by hopefully the Vikings getting a defensive score, getting a forced fumble, or two. You never know. This is a crazy, silly for the milli GPP lineup right here. We'll do one more. One more because I want to see how it looks picking Dak. Because we talked about it. We talked about Brandon Cooks. We talked about Dak. Dak is expensive. But Dallas at home, it's usually a first game of the season, usually a good combination. So let's go there. How did Lamb do last week? 10 targets. Didn't do much with him. Let's throw him in there. Let's throw in Cooks. So we have our double quarterback plus 2 wide receivers. And the reason I'm loving this even more this week is Ferguson's doubtful. He's out. Steffens, I don't even think he started the season with him. He's out. Schoonmaker, he'll probably garner some ownership. I don't know if he'll be chalky, but people are going to just assume that he's going to be the one. I think they just funnel more to wide receivers. New Orleans against the run, in the past, they've actually been known to be good against the run. Now, this is skewed. This opponent ranked first because of them playing Carolina for their first game. I don't know if this holds, but I like this starting GPP approach here. This is very interesting to me. Very, very, very interesting. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on this stack. Let's actually just go check really quickly. CeeDee Lamb is projected for 15% ownership, whereas Dak Prescott only 5. And let's go check Cooks. And then Cooks projected for 3% ownership. I like it. I like it a lot. Now, do we want to bring back? Sometimes bringbacks cost you the win. Sometimes they don't work. Do we want to chase the Rashid Shaheed explosion in week 1? Actually, good line in week 1. I wouldn't call it an explosion. Over 20 points, I would call it an explosion for sure. I have him in my season long, and in our league, we factor in punt return and kick return yards for our receivers. So I'm playing him. He's locked in this week, but primarily because he's guaranteed almost 10 points from returns, right, with his average. Plus, whatever he gets on top of that is great. I mean, it'd be awesome if Draftkings did that. I mean, he would have had, I think last week he had 80 return yards. I can't remember exactly. I'd have to double check, but that would have jumped up his fantasy score. I'm squirreling a little bit too much. Do we want to plug him in for the bringback, or do we want to go to, hear me out, this is GPP, silly for the milli, but Foster Moreau. Now, here's why I'm looking at Foster Moreau. He had a great week. Not a lot of people are talking about him. His ownership's staying low as of now. He did leave the game with a concussion. This could have been an even better week. I didn't realize he was on the team. Derek Carr and Foster Moreau go way back. They played in Oakland together for many, many years. So I think they still have a connection. Yes, Taysom Hill could snipe. He did get 2 of those targets last week. He did get 5 rushing attempts. Maybe he's the sneaky upside. Maybe it's Juwan Johnson. I know they talked about getting him more involved. He had a decent week with 1 touchdown, 3 targets. But look at their prices. I want to leave some meat on the bone, so to speak. Some money on the table to spend elsewhere. And Foster Moreau is only $2,600. So for now, I'm going to plug him in, but I like this bring back for this start on a Millie Maker lineup. Now, do we just get super different? Throw in Derrick Henry, right? YOLO. Throwing James Conner, divisional matchup. Let's keep a cheap defense, divisional matchup. We might even keep Kupp out of this lineup because it is a GPP milli maker approach. Although going with Jonathan Taylor might make more sense because I don't think a lot of people are going to play Jonathan Taylor. See where his ownership's at. It's at 5%. Yeah, a lot of the ownership between Hall and Mason opens things up for all these other running backs. Another notable that's out looks like he's doubtful, is Kenneth Walker. So Zach Charbonnet, and he's coming in at just under 8% ownership as of now. J.K. Dobbins, just under 8%. Derrick Henry, he's just under 8%. Another 8% is Jerome Ford. Kyron Williams is 15%. Gibbs is 10%. Part of me wants to throw Gibbs in there to get a piece of that Detroit Lions game. They are at home. I think they'll stop Montgomery for the most part. I think they're going to have to do passes to the outside to Gibbs. I'm not saying Montgomery can't have a good day, but I think he'll be held in check for the most part by Tampa Bay. So let's just go with Gibbs there. I really want a piece of that game. Now, I still want a piece of that game on the other side. Let's see if we can throw Godwin in there, see what happens. So that only leaves us 4,700. Tavian Wicks. I mean, we could get crazy with the double stack and do a game stack there with Moreau and Shaheed on the other side. Interesting approach, but I don't know. This is GPP after all, right? So let's go with McMillan. We put him in the last GPP. I want to put him in this GPP. Why? Because that allows us to get up to a Pacheco, who's going to be rather low owned, or even, can we make Kupp work? It's chalky, but if we can make that work in the flex, what do we have to adjust to make this work? Damn. Getting away from Henry. Because I still don't trust John Harbaugh. Like, just don't. He's all about this running back by committee, and he has this amazing bell cow running back, and if he's not going to utilize him like he should we even bother playing him? I think he's viable but yeah, this makes things tough here. And wow, I got to fix this brightness. I got to make sure that I turn that down for future videos. Make sure that's finely tuned for the next one. Man. Stevenson, I mean, he did have a great week against Cincinnati. 25 attempts, 3 targets. Silly for the millie right here. A silly for the millie. And that's a wrap. So thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you hit that subscribe on DFS Monkeys account, as this video, I'll try to migrate to that account. But for now, it's on this channel. So if you do find this from just searching YouTube or browsing YouTube or recommended from YouTube, make sure you go follow and subscribe to @DFS Monkey. Let me know the results of your lineup in the comments below. Hope you have a great week. Till next week. Peace.